Alex Sakova once said that the American public will endure until the day Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money. I believe that the minimum wage should be lowered rather than raised. The issue affects the majority of the people in their teens all the way up to their late 20s. A number of institute case studies have showed a strong negative correlation between raising the minimum wage and unemployment. My first point will be about raising the minimum wage and how it could actually put more teens out of work than before. Secondly, I'll talk about how the small businesses will be hurt by this decision. Then I'll go into the positive reasons why the minimum wage should actually be lowered rather than raised. And lastly, I'll discuss how increasing the minimum wage has already damaged the U.S. economy as a whole. Not only would raising the minimum wage most likely not help the involved state, it would presumably severely cripple the lower income citizens instead of helping them. Many people believe that raising the minimum wage would be the answer to many of their financial problems. But in reality, it would most likely leave the majority of hourly working class people in the same place or worse. This is mainly due to the fact that if the minimum wage is raised, so will several living expenses such as rent, groceries, and gas, just to list a few. For example, in the past, California raised their minimum wage significantly, and due to this fact, there are more than 300,000 households in San Diego County that do not make enough to cover their basic expenses. And that's, figuratively speaking, 37.8% of all homes in that county, says Deborah Rosen. So though it may seem like you'll be making more money, you're going to end up paying more on bills and living expenses and possibly end up like California in the long run. Not only will your average lower income citizens suffer, but also the small businesses and the people that employ them. Small businesses make up a large portion of the United States' economic wealth, 70% in fact, and much of their employees fall in the lower income category. So when they're forced to drastically increase their employees' hourly wages, it can have a number of adverse effects. When the minimum wage is raised, small businesses must make several choices in order to adjust financially. They normally would downsize, which would require them to slow production or let go of employees. It's predicted that if wages are increased by up to $10 million, it could cost the economy 500,000 jobs, says the DOL. They also may cut employees' hours in order to avoid being forced to pay benefits to full-time employees. Even in some small businesses' cases, that might be struggling. It may be more than their company can handle, and it may be forced to shut down. Rather than raising that minimum wage, we might be better off just lowering it. I believe that there are just as many reasons, if not more, to lower the minimum wage as there are to raise it. Though the general public would be a rather large obstacle to convince, the majority of minimum wage earners have for the most part always been teens working for some extra income. But for the last 4 years, 20% of the teens have been able to find work, says Wilson Mark. I believe that the course of action that should be taken will be lower to higher minimum wage that will allow the businesses to be able to hire additional employees, put teens back to work. The lowering the minimum wage will also allow for businesses in sales such as groceries, hardware, and other small storefronts, as well as the hospitality industry, to increase staff, lower their prices, increase overall inventory size. I believe that if the minimum wage is lowered, it could help reduce inflation of the US dollar rather than continue to overextend our dollar to gold holdings. Though not many people realize it, but raising the minimum wage has already had some serious repercussions in the economy, and that the silent majority is still unaware of. There are several states that have already decided to increase their minimum wage, but ended in total failure in terms of helping who it was meant to help in the lower working class. California and New York raise their minimum wage to $10 an hour. This has made living in those states just as much more difficult, to the point of the workforce having to leave to find work elsewhere. The increase in pay came at a cost, at high increase in housing prices, to the point that much of the low-income earners can no longer afford to pay them. So for these reasons, I believe that we'd be better off lowering the minimum wage rather than raising it, because raising it would cause businesses to have to let go of employees, cut hours, avoid having to, and make it hard to pay benefits. The increase in minimum wage may even cause the price of necessities and rent to increase as well. So rather than increasing the minimum wage, it seems much more educated to lower it so small businesses can afford to pay benefits to employees, even expand and make more positions available for those employees. Because as we learn, the states that have increased minimum wage are suffering the consequences now. So before you decide with your idea of a higher minimum wage, remember that it may seem like a win-win situation, that in one way or another, they'll get their money back. Thank you.